Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we're going to be discussing the potential trade involving Deshaun Watson to the New York Football Jets. So let's get started. Now, for those who don't follow my podcast, or if you're new to following my podcast, thank you for tuning in. I like to break down all my podcasts into three parameters. The first one is who are the players and coaches involved. The second parameter is why the move was made or could be made. And the last but not least parameter is the instant gratification versus long-term gains. All right, so let's go ahead and in this case talk about who. Well, it's the player, Deshaun Watson. What does he bring to the table? Well, let's go ahead and talk about how he broke into the NFL and where he sits today. All right, he was a 2017 first-round pick, drafted number 12 overall by the Houston Texans coming out of Clemson. He then went on to 3 Pro Bowls, and then this past year had a career season in which he led the NFL in passing yards at 4,823. He ranked 7th with 33 touchdown passes, had a 70.2% completion percentage, which ranked 3rd in the NFL, and he ranked 2nd overall in quarterback passer rating, trailing only behind Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who is likely the MVP at 112.4. So when you put that all together, what do you get? A franchise quarterback and a top 5-1 at that. That's what you're getting with Deshaun Watson. All right, so majority of NFL fans wish they had Watson, and unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs or a team like the Baltimore Ravens, yeah, you're going to want a guy like Watson because Watson brings to the table not only all-pro potential, but a future Hall of Fame career. Who wouldn't want that, right? But looking at it from a management perspective, you can't simply just say, oh, I want that player on my team. You have to look at it for what it's worth. Salary cap plays a role. The locker room dynamic holds weight in terms of what this player brings to the table and how he fits the team's culture identity in that team city, and the risk reward of getting this high profile player, because at the end of the day, these are the power play moves that gets GMs admired or fired. And I said it on 3 earlier podcasts involving potential trades for Deshaun Watson. The Miami Dolphins is one, the San Francisco 49ers are another, and the Carolina Panthers were my third. This is the 4th Deshaun Watson potential trade that I'm breaking down brick by brick so you can kind of get a clear picture on what it takes for these teams to make a play for the franchise quarterback. But getting back to the New York Football Jets, I think the New York Jets would be an ideal fit because they have salary cap health, they have current roster assets that the team can trade, and New York Jets have leverage in terms of where they want to play this, how they want to play this. So let's talk about the salary cap health. They have $65 million in salary cap health, a little over $65 million. And when you have that, you can kind of fit Deshaun Watson in your salary cap based on the moves that are going to be made and the players that are going to be involved. That's a lot of real estate to be working with, all right? So there's a lot of room for error in making a potential trade for Deshaun Watson. The question that I have is draft capital. If you're Jets GM Joe Douglas, and I said this on Twitter, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm just reiterating for those that don't follow me on Twitter that every GM values draft capital more than any other tradable asset. And the reason I say that is because draft capital is the most prized asset simply because it can help leverage the salary cap. You have guys on rookie deals, and if they're playing at an all-pro level, in this case, you look at a guy like Fred Warner, who's named a first-team all-pro, playing at a first-team all-pro level the last 2 years. He was a third-round draft pick coming out in 2018. Well, he's due for a new contract, but the 49ers were getting him on the cheap over the last 2 years, playing better than Bobby Wagner, who's getting paid $18 million annually, as opposed to Fred Warner getting paid about $1 million. I think it's less than $1 million annually. So if you look at the difference from $18 million that Bobby Wagner was getting compared to Fred Warner, who was playing at a higher level the last 2 years, but because he was playing at a higher level and stuck to a rookie deal, he was getting vastly underpaid. That's a $17 million difference over the course of 2 years. You do the math, that's $34 million overdue for Fred Warner. But that's for another discussion. You can watch that podcast in the description below as well. I like to tie on earlier podcasts into this one so you can kind of see what I'm saying in real time, and so everything makes sense and comes full circle. All right, but getting that back to the New York Jets, I look at it from Joe Douglas' standpoint, and if I'm Joe Douglas, I have a lot of draft capital But there's no guarantee these draft picks will pan out. There's no guarantee these draft picks pan out, and that's why I believe the right play is to make a move for Deshaun Watson, because at the end of the day, it takes something to gain something. And when you look at other teams who are possibly going to be making a play for Deshaun Watson, the New York Jets have tradable assets. They have draft picks, right? They have 2 first-round draft picks over the course of the next 2 years, thanks to sending strong safety Jamal Adams to the Seattle Seahawks. So they have the draft capital to make a play. They have the salary cap to fit in Deshaun Watson in this deal, and it makes sense for both parties. Nick Caserio gets draft capital, which he's going to need because he has holes everywhere, and they can get younger at certain positions and still land a quarterback of their choice, as in Sam Darnold. That's right. So let's go ahead and break this down. But before I break down that trade or the potential trade for Deshaun Watson, I like to go back into past history and just talk about football knowledge. Just go ahead and talk about football knowledge in general. I look at the last time the Jets were in a rebuilding mode, a serious rebuilding mode where they held this much draft capital. It takes me back to 2000. It takes me back to 2000. I was still in high school, but I covered the NFL draft as a hobby, and then really started focus and keying in on the NFL draft during that year. Actually started, I would say, analyzing drafts and going over mock drafts back in 1999, but 2000 is the year I really hit it on and was in stride. The 2000 NFL draft is a draft that the New York Jets, if you remember, had 4 first-round draft picks. They yielded 4 first-round draft picks because they had number 18 overall, in which they drafted the quarterback of the future in Chad Pennington out of Marshall, but they also had 3 more draft picks due to trades that were made. One was shipping off Keyshawn Johnson, I believe, to the Tampa Bay Bucks for number 13 and 27 overall. I think I'm getting this right. And I believe they also got another first-round draft pick because Bill Belichick left the New York Jets for the New England Patriots. And when you do that, you have draft capital and draft flexibility to maneuver and manipulate the draft how you want because you hold the cards. And what do the New York Jets do? I believe at number 12 they drafted Sean Ellis out of Tennessee, and then at number 13 they drafted John Abraham, an edge rusher. And during that time, edge rushers were considered hybrids. They weren't considered edge. There was a term hybrid, and he was a defensive end outside linebacker. So hybrid or slash tweener is what we called in today's edge category. He was considered a tweener. Guys like Chico Kiefer out of Purdue was also considered a tweener who came out of the 1999 NFL draft. And there's a few other tweeners I can go off the top of my head if you want to go that route, but you get the picture. He was a tweener. Then they drafted, like I said, number 18 overall, they drafted Chad Pennington out of Marshall, and I believe at number 27 they found their tight end Anthony Becht out of West Virginia, I believe. I think he went there. In any case, those are the players I think that were drafted, and I'm going to look back and see if I'm right. Look back at this part. Oh, you were wrong. No, I'm pretty sure I was right. But no, those are the players at least that were drafted. I got that right. I know that for a fact. And as far as the colleges, I'm not too concerned about that, but you guys can do your research. I'm pretty sure I got that right too. But yeah, that's what it took for the New York Jets to start a rebuilding phase and get this ship going in the right direction. They had guys like wide receiver Wayne Corbett, who the team also had, and they had a good core of players, but in order to start that rebuilding process, they needed draft capital. Well, not much has changed 21 years later. The only difference that they're trying to make is back in 2000, they were gaining draft capital. Well, in Deshaun Watson's scenario, 21 years later, they're going to have to give up draft capital. So it's one or the other. You're going to have to pick your poison and roll with the punches. So what would it take to land Deshaun Watson to the New York Jets? That's what everyone's asking me. I know you fans on Twitter are asking for my opinion on that. You guys liked my Panthers trade scenario. You guys also liked my Dolphins and Niners potential trade scenario. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And now you guys want your team, the New York Jets potential trade scenario. Well, it's going to take something. In order to gain something, you're going to have to give up something. That's just how it works. And if you're the New York Jets, and if I'm Joe Douglas, I'm sending away or trading away my draft picks. I'm trading away my first round draft pick, number 2 overall. I'm sending my number 23 overall draft pick, which I got from the Jamal Adams deal. and then I'm trading the first round pick the following year that I got from the Jamal Adams deal, along with quarterback Sam Darnold. So that's a 4-for-1 deal. When you take into account the salary cap and how it works for both organizations, it makes the most sense, and here's why. I'm going to break it down for you, okay? So Sam Darnold has a $9.7 million cap number for 2021. If you trade him to the Houston Texans and I'm Nick Caserio, I'm not taking on $9.7 million worth of his contract, because what happens is when he gets traded to the Houston Texans, $5 million is set in dead money. Well, $5 million in set in dead money leaves a balance of $4.7 million. That $4.7 million salary is going to be the salary that Houston Texans takes on. The remaining fraction of the $9.7 million contract that's owed for the 2021 season, the difference is going to be by the team that drafted him, in this case, the New York Jets. So you're getting Sam Darnold at a fraction of the price, and who knows, that player can pan out to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player. He's still young in his career, and a fresh start might be needed for him to have that kind of success. Now, if I'm Nick Caserio, I want Sam Darnold on my team because, again, he's still young in his career. He didn't have much of a supporting cast to begin with. The same positional needs that the Jets have, the Houston Texans have. So this deal makes sense for both organizations because Nick Caserio gets 3 draft picks, first-round draft picks in return, but also gets a quarterback that he can potentially groom for his foreseeable future. Now, let's say Sam Darnold doesn't pan out. Well, now, if I'm Nick Caserio, I still get Sam Darnold in my back pocket, but then at number 2, I have draft flexibility. I can either draft the quarterback that I want, whether it be Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, whoever that quarterback is, or I can take the best player available, which would be wide receiver Devonta Smith, and have that player kind of work with Sam Darnold to see how Sam Darnold does with a better supporting cast around him. You see where I'm going with this? And then at number 23, the Houston Texans can wipe their hands clean of David Johnson, and then they can go ahead and draft a guy like Alabama's running back Najee Harris. Or if they want to target Najee Harris because they believe that Najee Harris will get drafted one pick later behind him by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they feel like other teams ahead of them might make a play for Najee Harris somewhere in the mid to late teens, then you're going to have the draft capital to kind of trade up. Well, you do have capital to trade up thanks to the New York Jets trade. So you see where draft flexibility and draft leverage comes into play, because at the end of the day, the more draft capital you have, the more opportunities you have to make a play for a coveted player. It's going to take something to gain something. If you're Nick Caserio, you want draft picks, because draft picks is what's going to help build your future team moving forward. You're wiping your hands clean of a franchise quarterback. You need all the darts at the board that you can get. And the New York Jets seriously offer that draft position and gives you the, how do I say this? Gives you the assets, I would say, for you to move forward. It makes sense for both organizations. Now, again, draft flexibility is huge, and Najee Harris is quickly climbing up draft boards. I'm surprised that he's not in top 15 discussion right now. I put out a tweet earlier that the Niners should even make a play, or seriously make a play for him at number 12, and keep the Antioch Bay Area kid here in the Bay Area. Well, that's all wishful thinking, because who knows what John Lynch is thinking. I think Kyle Shanahan's probably like, nah, we can get an undrafted guy and plug him in and have success. That may be true, but can these running backs stay healthy? Can they be durable enough to sustain a full 16-game schedule? Can they sustain a deep playoff run after that full 16, now 17-game schedule, mind you? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And in today's NFL, it's always good to have 2 running backs. We see it with the Cleveland Browns with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb and a few others. So the need for the running back, although it's a pass-happy NFL team or pass-happy NFL league, is still there. You still need to run the football in the later months and in a deep playoff run to ultimately hold the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year. It's just the way it goes. All right? So that's a guy who I really like, and if Nick Caserio can pull this deal off in which he gets those draft picks that I mentioned, number 2 overall, number 23 overall, and then the Seattle Seahawks first round pick that the Jets got from the Jamal Adams trade, plus Sam Darnold, you're leveraging the trade in your favor, because now you can do whatever you want. you can keep Sam Darnold as your quarterback for another year. At number 2, you can draft the quarterback of the future and then trade one of them. Let's say Sam Darnold has a year like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and now he becomes like, oh my gosh, a hot commodity. Let's trade for him. We all seen it in years past. Guys like Matt Castle, right? You've seen guys that kind of came out of nowhere, but then were kind of intriguing. Jimmy Garoppolo is another one. So if you have that kind of asset at your disposal, especially at a premium position like the quarterback, you can sit really pretty if you play your cards right. And I believe the New York Jets are a prime location because draft position plays a role. Now, if you're a team like, let's say, the Detroit Lions, or if you're a team that's like picking at number 8, 9, and 10 area, I don't see a trade for Deshaun Watson as attractive if I'm Nick Caserio, because more times than not, not too many people are talking about this, but the top 3 quarterbacks are going to be off the board by the time the Lions pick at number 7. So if you're picking from 7 on, the way the draft board currently stands, you're kind of SOL. And if you're the New York Jets, you're in a prime draft position to make a deal for Deshaun Watson, because if you're Nick Caserio, you have your pick of the litter outside of Trevor Lawrence. And that's a match made in heaven right there, because now if there's a team that wants a Justin Fields or Zach Wilson and you're on the clock, you can field offers for other players and be like, hey, look, or other teams, and be like, okay, so you want number 2? Okay, well, let's trade back. Now you're getting more ammo and more darts at the board. So it makes sense for the New York Jets to wipe your hands clean of those draft picks, get a sure thing in return in Deshaun Watson. On the flip side of that, if you're Texans GM Nick Caserio, you can leverage this trade by getting Sam Darnold as a stopgap quarterback or a tradable asset down the line if he has a better supporting cast, and you can choose to do what you want with him. Either keep him moving forward and draft a Devonta Smith at number 2 and then Najee Harris at number 23, or you can draft the quarterback of the future at number 2, see which one, have a camp battle, see which one pans out, and go from there, and then trade the other one to whatever team you want and get more draft capital. It makes sense. And that's why the New York Jets are a likely destination for Deshaun Watson. Now, Deshaun Watson has to do one of 2 things. Mainly, he has to waive his no-trade clause to even consider a trade to the New York Jets or any team for that matter. And it depends on when that's going to take place, if it will ever take place, because one of his 2 head coaches that he wants was Eric Bieniemy. And Eric Bieniemy interviewed for the Texans head coaching position. If there's one coach that can keep Deshaun Watson in Houston, I think it's Eric Bieniemy, because of what he brings to the table in terms of an offensive-minded coach, someone who's an innovator, and he has the skill set that Deshaun Watson looks for in an NFL coach in terms of how he can make Deshaun Watson the best quarterback in the NFL. We've seen him do it with Pat Mahomes, and he sees similar success that can potentially play out if he was the play caller. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I like the trade proposal for the New York Jets in terms of getting rid of 3 first-round draft picks and Sam Darnold, and then getting a franchise quarterback, potential Hall of Fame quarterback in return. Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to say. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, as I keep all things Beast. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.